Which school without a state in its name is likely to give Michigan a challenge in 2023, much like Illinois did last season?
I mean, I think it comes earlier this year. I think that I've been calling them oh shit games. Sorry, kids, earmuffs. But I think that comes a little earlier this year because you have those road games at Nebraska, at Minnesota, at Maryland the week before Ohio State is going to be sneaky difficult. If I was a betting man, I would venture to guess. I mean, saying 3 games is just a total cop out, but one of the Nebraska or Minnesota games is going to be one where Michigan really kind of has to scratch and claw to survive, because I can see them rolling through. They're going to roll through those first 3 non-conference games. They're probably going to do a number on Rutgers that next weekend at home, but given that there is, again, I like the focus of this group. I like the mentality. I like the work ethic, but I think it's going to come early. I think the wake-up call is going to come a little earlier on this year.
Yeah, I'd point to probably Minnesota as well, and then just the positioning of that Maryland game between Penn State and Ohio State, and having to go on the road there to a team that has a veteran quarterback and a wide receiving core that I like, and that I think is going to be pretty good. Scares you just a little bit. Michigan has fared well over the years in that penultimate regular season game the week before Ohio State. I've used plethora and penultimate, so you can cross those off on your bingo card. But I mean, that's just going to be a tough spot, I feel like. And depending on where Maryland is towards the end of the season, I mean, you would guess, knowing Maryland, they probably have 6-7 wins, and they're trying to get a better bowl game, and they're still fighting for something. But like you said, and I've been saying it all offseason too, I think one of those Nebraska or Minnesota games are going to be tough. It's going to be a game Michigan's just going to have to escape, and you'll be completely fine with that moving on to the next week. And the thing about the positioning of those 2 games, at Nebraska September 30th and at Minnesota October 7th, Nebraska has some juice right now with Matt Rule coming in. They may not have that in November, but Michigan plays them September 30th. So there's going to be a lot. It's going to be one of the biggest games of their season, no matter what, but especially early on in that tenure of Matt Rule, that'll be a big one for them. And then Minnesota, same type of thing. Who knows how the West is going to shake out, but those are 2 teams that I think early on in the year will have, high hopes. And you see it throughout the season in Big Ten play every year, where early on in the year, maybe a team competes or wins a game they shouldn't. And then by the end of the year, that team is kind of a pushover. So I don't think that'll be, or I think that will kind of be the case with these 2 teams. Maybe, neither of them, or maybe just one of them competes in the Big Ten West, but early on in the year, they could be a challenge.
Yeah. And like I said, we just turned in the football preview. For me, that comes with a full Big Ten preview. I predicted the records for every team. I don't think it's going to take very long for Matt Rule to turn things around at Nebraska. So I think that again, I don't know that they're winning the West this year, but I think anyone who thinks you're going to Lincoln on September 30th, and even you saw it a couple years ago when they played a Scott Frost team. I mean, that place will be rocking. And if it's a night game, their fans are going to show up. I feel like, if you're really, if you're kind of pushing me to make, pick between one of these games, I think that's the one. I think that offensively, Michigan and Minnesota play very similarly. I think that they have a similar, both very physical programs. Actually, Minnesota's size and physicality, I think, is going to be maybe not a wake-up call for Michigan, but something that they have to contend with. But that Nebraska game, to me, when I look at this schedule, obviously it's going to be tough. We're talking about the opponents that don't have a state in their last name, but yeah, I don't see. If we're talking about home games, I don't see Indiana. I think Indiana's probably, from my perspective, the worst team in the Big Ten coming into this year. Purdue is lost a lot from last year's team, and I just think when you change coaches, you change schemes. Ryan Walters is not Matt Rule. He's not a guy with that type of track record. To me, it's that Nebraska game. So shout out to Husker Nation and our producer Megan behind the scenes on that. But yeah, any other thoughts on where they might trip up here?
Yeah, I mean, this is also in the context of, hey, what games could give them trouble. I think there's also a good chance in all those games we mentioned they could roll.
Yeah.
Minnesota has a ton of question marks. Ibrahim's gone. Tanner Morgan's gone. All sorts of guys are gone. They're going to be a completely different team this fall than they were last season. Nebraska, same thing. Now, maybe in a positive way. I will also note, too, in 2021, unbelievable environment, one of the best I've ever seen at Nebraska. But this is also a Michigan team, I think, that is better and has more firepower. And that Michigan team got better as the year went on. So early on in that season, they weren't necessarily what they were at the end. So I could also see Michigan rolling each of those opponents as well, just as likely maybe as it being like a 4-point game or something like that.